We're here to talk to you about art and Raphael. My name is Ryan Bax.
I'm Carolyn James.
I'm Jenna Prather.
I'm Matt Boger.
And as you can see, the title of our talk is Raphael's Artistic Depiction of Truth and Beauty, the Offspring of Faith, Reason, and Virtue. So, over spring break, there were 15 Ravens and some other college students from across the country who made a trip to Rome, a pilgrimage to Rome. And a lot of us had goals of finding things that would inspire us to take part in the new evangelization and preach the gospel more. Others were going to offer up prayer petitions in the tomb of St. Peter. Others were going for discernment purposes. And obviously, a lot of us were going for fun. And you can see us there. That's us being interviewed on WTN on Life on the Rock. So obviously, that was quite a bit of fun. So, when in Rome, what do? You do as the Romans do, right? Well, we did as Americans did, took a ton of pictures. So, all the pictures in our slide, or in our show today are taken by us. They may not be like perfectly professional, but we did the best we could. So.
Alright, so one of the major things that we did during our trip was visit a bunch of churches, and in a lot of these churches were tombs of saints. So this first image here, this is actually a statue. It isn't a relic, but this is St. Bartholomew in the church or the Basilica of John Lateran. And the cool thing about this statue is he was martyred by being flayed, so his skin was cut off. And so he's holding his skin here, and it's really cool because right here is his face. It's kind of just melting out of his skin. It's a really cool statue. But so we saw a lot of images of saints. Up here in the top right corner, this is where the body of St. Catherine of Siena is buried. And then down here in the bottom, this is one of my favorites. This is the hand of St. Francis Xavier. And so the story is this is the hand that baptized countless thousands of Christians. So it was really cool to be able to see all of these relics and see all of these tombs in these churches.
Alright, also while we were in Rome, we visited 4 major basilicas, starting with St. Mary Major, which was the first church dedicated to Mary as the Mother of God. Next is John Lateran, where, as Carolyn was saying, there are statues of all 12 apostles lining the way up to the main altar and the pastor of John Lateran. Pictured here is St. Paul outside the wall. As you can see, he's holding a sword. It's St. Paul's symbol. The reason it is called St. Paul outside the wall is because the basilica is outside of the walls of both the Vatican and of ancient Rome itself. St. Peter's Basilica, obviously, is the major basilica of the Vatican City itself, where countless popes and other saints have relics and or are buried. St. Peter's remains themselves are actually there inside St. Peter's in Vatican City.
One of the other places we visited was the Vatican Museums inside of Vatican City itself. And so this is where the inspiration for our presentation comes from today. And so this is your ticket to the Vatican Museums, and we will be your tour guides today. The main focus of this will be Raphael's room of signatura, or the signature room of Raphael. Located inside this room, there are 4 walls, and obviously the room. And so on each of the 4 walls is 4 different frescoes. And those will be what we will discuss as we go through. So the School of Athens is the one up here. The Disputation of the Most Holy Sacrament, the Virtues, and the Parnassus. So we will go into those.
Alright, so first is the School of Athens. Okay, so as you can see, there are quite a few people in this picture. And there's 57 to be exact. And basically it's a bunch of mathematicians, philosophers, astronomers, and scientists from the era when classic Western thought flourished. So in your mind, divide this up into 2 sides and split between those 2 guys right there. So, on your left, we have what I call the non-tangible side. Believers in the metaphysical, if you will. And so, you have Pythagoras down here, who's most famous for the Pythagorean theorem, deriving the Pythagorean theorem. You can see a statue up here. This is of Apollo. Apollo was the Greek god of prophecy and music. You can also see a depiction of St. Gabriel the Archangel. And one thing I forgot to say about Pythagoras is he often asked the question of what is beauty. He contemplated whether beauty was of the divine or not. So hopefully you can see that this side represents non-tangible, believers in the non-tangible, or studiers of the non-tangible. So on your right side, we have studiers of the tangible, things that are physical, things that you can actually sense. And for example, we have Ptolemy down here. Ptolemy was a scientist who, or he was an astronomer actually, who taught that the Earth was the center of the universe. Obviously today we know that's not true. Also we have a statue of Athena. Athena was the Greek god of wisdom and war tactics. And also we have a self-portrait of Raphael. And it's kind of zoomed in over there on the right. So he puts himself on this side with the scientist, the tangible side, as I said. So, the point of this picture, these two guys in the middle, who are they? Plato and Aristotle. Plato is pointing up, as you can see. Aristotle is motioning down with his hand. Plato is holding his work, the Timaeus, in which he explains the world in which we live is reminiscent of some greater reality that is above us, in a sense, and unchanging. All we sense in this world, he believes, is not real, but rather an image of this greater reality. And in this greater reality, it contains what is really true, good, and beautiful. And as you can see, he's wearing red and gray, both representative of fire and ether. Ether is air in a sense. And so those are both non-tangible things, non-tangible elements. So on the right side, you have Aristotle. Aristotle represents the physical side, as I said. He's holding his book, Ethics, in which he explains that the reality in which we currently live really is true. Our senses do not deceive us, as Aristotle would say. So he emphasizes human relationships and studying them and mastering and creating them in a sense. As you can see, he's wearing blue and brown. And that's representative of water and earth, both tangible elements. So, and hopefully from what you can see from this slide is that it emphasizes studying philosophy and learning natural truth through that study. So,
next we have the Disputation of the Most Holy Sacrament, the Disputation of the Eucharist. Some believe that it should really be called the triumph of religion because the main point of it is to represent the victory of Christianity over many of the philosophical arguments that were made in the School of Athens. So like when you walk into this room, on one side is the Disputation of the Sacrament, and on the other side, directly across from it, is the School of Athens. So they kind of play off of each other in that respect. And there are two tiers in this fresco that you can see. The top tier is the Church Triumphant, or those who are already in heaven, and the lower tier is the Church Militant, or those who are still here on earth fighting the good fight. So we'll start in the lower tier, and the first thing that you may see that grabs your attention is the altar here, and on the altar is the monstrance with the Eucharist. It's the focal point that your eyes go to. And on either side are members of the Church Militant, as I said, and they're represented in the early Church Fathers. So on the left side over here, you have St. Jerome, who's seated, and he's holding a book that represents his transcription of the sacred scripture. And standing next to him is St. Bernard, and he's pointing to the Eucharist. And on the opposite side here we have St. Ambrose, who is seated, and next to him is a man who I could not identify in any of my sources, but he is pointing up to heaven. So we saw those same hand gestures over on the opposite side in the School of Athens. And then at the top here, you have the Church Triumphant. In the middle is the Trinity, surrounded by the Church Triumphant. So on the left side, we have St. Peter, and he's holding the keys, which is his saintly symbol as well. Next to him is Adam, and then St. John the Evangelist. Over on the right side, we have St. Paul, who also has the sword again, his saintly symbol. Next to him is Abraham with the knife that he would have used to sacrifice Isaac. Followed by St. James the Elder, and then Moses with the tablets. But one of the main things I wanted to draw your attention to is here in the middle, the Trinity. And so at the very top, we have God the Father, and then Jesus Christ in the middle. On either side of him is Mary, his mother, and John the Baptist, the precursor. Below that is the Holy Spirit depicted in a dove, and it's supposed to represent the bridge between heaven and earth. So the bridge between the Church Triumphant and the Church Militant that leads us down to the earth. And for me, when I saw this, like this bridge, like sending down from heaven, from God the Father and the Son, the Holy Spirit down to earth, it reminded me of the words that the priest says at Mass when he calls down the Holy Spirit. So send down your Spirit upon them like the dew fall. These are words that we hear every Sunday at Mass in some form. So in these two tiers, as we said, the church triumphant and the church militant, and then in the hand postures here pointing towards the Eucharist and again pointing towards heaven, we can see the two ways in which Christ is seen in these two groups. So the church triumphant sees Christ face to face up in heaven, and the church militant here on earth sees Christ veiled in the Eucharist on the altar. And so I think a perfect description of this piece of art, this Disputation of the Most Holy Sacrament, is given by a man named Ernesto Bigini. And he said, "No other artist has ever so well expressed the closeness of the bond that links the visible and the invisible world, the heavens and the earth." Ultimately, this wall, the Disputation of the Most Holy Sacrament, is meant to express the supernatural truth through the study of theology and faith.
Next is the Cardinal and Theological Virtues. On the far right, you have Lady, your guys' left, you have Lady Fortitude. In the middle here, you have Lady Prudence. And here on your right is Lady Temperance. If you notice, out of the three, Lady Prudence was above the other two because prudence is a guiding virtue for the other virtues. If you look here at Lady Fortitude, she's wearing battle armor. She's also holding a sword. Fortitude, as I'm sure most of you know, can be defined as the virtue of courage or strength. It's what keeps us going in our decisions and our choices, even when things are not always easy. The armor represents that she's ready for a fight. Hence why she's the strength that keeps us going, because fortitude is not meant to be weak and be able to push over. It's more like a soldier who's ready to go and fight. The oak branch represents how it's meant to be solid, like a great oak tree. If you look here onto her right side, or I guess your guys' left, there's a little baby here. That's supposed to be representative of charity. Because we need to remember that while we are supposed to be strong on our decisions, if the situation calls for it, we also need to be charitable, as we are called to be as Christians. In the middle here is Lady Prudence. If you look at her, she has two faces, one here and one here on her chest. The one above, or attached to her head, is representative of youth. The one on her chest is a bit older looking. It's meant to represent old age, for we are supposed to have prudence in our decisions when we are young and when we are old. It's meant to last our entire lifetime. Off to her right here, you see her holding the mirror and looking into it. The mirror represents self-reflexivity, because with prudence we are supposed to be able to look ahead and see our decisions. We're also meant to reflect on our decisions afterwards to see if what we did was right and correct. Over here, finally, is Lady Temperance. Now, if you notice in her hands, she's holding what appear to be reins. That's because temperance is a virtue of keeping us in line and guiding us on the path to good and justice, just as a driver would do with a horse on the reins. It directs the horse where to go. If you look closely, she's reining in this poor little Cupid over here. That is supposed to be representative of faith, because temperance is what keeps our faith in line and directs it where to go. Over here, this little happy fellow is supposed to be representative of hope. And if you look closely, pulling upward with his hand over there. It's meaning that hope is in everything on earth, but we should always be hopeful. We should always place our hope first in God above.
Alright, the final fresco we'll look at is the Wall of Parnassus, and this is a depiction of beauty. Beauty in connection with the other three frescoes we've seen is the fruit of living out faith, reason, and the virtues. Just kind of as an overview, this is an image of Mount Parnassus, and on Mount Parnassus you see Apollo Apollo here in the middle, surrounded by the muses, and specifically poetry sitting next to him, and then other ancient writers along the sides of the mountain. And so within this image, we'll see several depictions of what beauty is and how it's defined. So first, let's look at Apollo. Apollo is sitting here, and as Ryan had mentioned earlier, Apollo is the god of music. And so first we see here that beauty can be expressed through music. Sitting next to him is poetry, and as her name suggests, beauty can be seen through poetry and the written word. Additionally, along the sides here, we have some famous authors and writers. So over here, you can't really see it too well, but we have Dante's right here, and Homer and Virgil right there. And so we have some ancient authors along the sides here representing how beauty can be expressed through literature and through writing. So as a whole, how does this fresco connect with the depiction of virtues and faith and reason? So first, when looking at this fresco in connection to the virtues, you have to understand where this painting is and the connection of the whole painting. So when the viewer is facing this fresco, directly behind the viewer in this room is the depiction of the virtues that Matt was describing. And this is a really cool representation of the connection between virtues and beauty in our own lives. Because in this room, virtue perpetually faces beauty, beauty perpetually faces virtue, showing how there's an indissoluble connection between virtue and beauty in a person's life. It also shows how this connection calls each person to live a moral and virtuous life, and as a result, they will live a beauty-filled life. John Paul II actually describes this in his letter to artists, calling each individual to be a craftsman, and that can mean one of two things. It can mean first that people should be craftsmen of the arts, so through music, through writing, through painting like Raphael here, whatever it might be. So we're called to promote beauty through the expression of fine arts. Additionally though, JP2 says every individual is called to be a craftsman of their own character in promoting beauty. What does that mean? It means living a virtue-filled life. So that shows the connection between the virtues that we saw that Matt described, and then also the description and practices. So the connection between, that is the connection between beauty and virtues, but what about faith and reason? So faith, as we saw in the disputation of the Eucharist, and then reason, as we saw depicted in the school of Athens. So faith and reason help us understand what is true and beautiful, and virtues ultimately help us live out what is beautiful. So basically, faith, reason, and virtues are meant to be lived out, and the fruit of living that kind of life is beauty, which is why it was included in this room of signature. So ultimately, Raphael's room of the signature emphasizes that knowing the truth, including natural truth and theological truth, combined with good works done through the use of the theological and cardinal virtues, will lead one to know what is truly good and beautiful in this life and the next. And the really cool thing about this room is the whole room is a depiction of the Catholic life. That we're all called to not just be rational beings or just theological beings, but we're called to be both rational and theological. We're called to be virtuous, and as a result, bring beauty not only in our own lives, but in the whole world. So, kind of bringing it to connection here at UC, this is actually also a representation of Catholic education, and how that's why you take philosophy, but you also take biology, or whatever it is, that well-roundedness that starts with that faith, reason, and virtues. And so, yeah, ultimately, the fruit of this is beauty.
And while we were over there, Dr. Shri gave us a challenge in our lives. And he made us first, he wanted us to think about how we pursue beauty in our lives, like just how we do it. Also, he also wants us to think about what we're putting into our heads with other movies, anything, basically, any of the arts, anything. It's like, what exactly are you putting in your head? What exactly are you thinking about? And is that good for you? Is it going to help you, or is it going to hinder you? He called us to think after analyzing everything in our lives that we listen to cut out what's going to hurt us, but leave what will stay.
Finally, we want to invite all of you to think about attending the Rome pilgrimage. This is our plug for the Rome pilgrimage. It really was an awesome experience that I'm still talking about to this day, and I really want to go back sometime soon. So if you would like to do so, talk with Father Brendan, either in the ministry office, or send him an email, or like Martin the Tours on Facebook, and get more information about the Rome pilgrimage.
We would like to thank our sources, and any questions, you can ask us about our trip to Rome or about our talk. Naomi?
Okay, in Raphael's depiction of the virtues, was there a reason why he depicted all three of the theological virtues, but only three of the cardinal virtues? He left out justice. Why was that done?
Justice is pictured in 2 other places in the room, but they're each considered separate works. Because if you look up at the ceiling in the room of the signature, there's 4 little circles around the top that have figures in them. They are music, theology, philosophy, and justice. So it's pictured off by itself as to emphasize its importance. Also, underneath the theological and cardinal virtues is a doorway, and then on the doorposts are 2 depictions of civic justice and natural justice. The reason it was separated is mainly just to emphasize that while the other virtues are very important as well, justice is very important.
And the reason we didn't include it is we couldn't get a good picture of it, because there was a window over there and the sun was coming in.
Finding the pictures we had is a blessing.
Yes.
I just wanted you to know that in the library, in the honors room, there is a very nice reproduction of both the School of Athens and Disputation on the Eucharist, if you wanted to revisit your time.
There's tons of stuff about these paintings. There's so much stuff.
But it's a good reproduction. It's a beautifully done one.
We kind of just give you guys the gist. So like if you're interested in it, definitely go look it up. There's tons of stuff about all the symbolism of this room. So.
Or go see it for yourself.
Or, yeah.
Question. I mean, obviously, if you go into this room, it's a rectangle. He takes, philosophy, theology, those are the main works on the side. And he's got a door to the inside and a window to the outside. Do you think there's any symbolism why the virtues get the door to the inside while the muses get the window to the outside?
There could be, because the virtues can be mainly an internal thing, as like the virtues are meant for ourselves to become better people, and then it's through beauty perhaps that we can show the virtues to everyone else in the world. And that's why you can see in and out of the window, and you can go in a door, but you can also go out of the window, and you can also fall out of virtue as well.
So yeah, beauty is kind of the output of of the coming in of the virtues and the reason that they have. So I guess that's the way to interpret that. Yes.
And this was at the Vatican Museum? Yes. Man, I was just there 6 months ago, I missed that.
This is only like a section, like, the Vatican Museum is huge. I think our Dr.
Yeah,
was
but
saying,
I don't even remember seeing that. I mean, this is amazing.
well, I think Dr. was saying if you spent like 1 minute looking at every single thing in the Vatican Museum, it'd take like 4 years or something. Like it's a huge collection.
So I shouldn't feel
It's-
bad.
No.
It's huge. Those have to go back.
Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, do you think that recognizing and appreciating true beauty takes an acquired taste, or do you think, I guess it seems like with God, with truth, there's objective truth, and then there's things that we say, oh, this is true, but it's a lie, it's false. So with beauty, do you think there's objectively that this is beauty, and that if I don't see it as beautiful yet, then I need to be purified, or do you have that somewhere?
Well, I think beauty is within the eye of the beholder, obviously.
I mean, but I think like beauty is established as like God is beauty, and yeah, and so I think like we as we learn to know God, I think we learn to know like He is truly beautiful. I don't know.
No, I don't know what the answer is. I was just wondering what your thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Like there are things that are objectively beautiful, beautiful, and there are some things that just appeal to people more than others, but there are certain things in the world that people will definitely look at and be like, oh, that's beautiful. Like, especially in nature, there are just some things that people see, like the mountains, for example. Not very many people are like, ugh.
Yeah, sunrise.
Yeah.